I am a sucker for haunted hospital or asylum movies. There's been some good ones, there's been some bad ones. So I was excited to see that there was a Taiwanese haunted hospital movie that I had yet to see. We are talking Hospital, or at least that is the English translation of the movie. And it's a 2020 movie, so it's quite a recent one. And the story focuses on a group of 4 people. We've got these 2 priests, an older guy and his son, and they are taking these 2 women into this kind of haunted hospital to commune with dead relatives who have died at the hospital. Now the interesting thing here is the 2 women are actually somewhat kind of antagonistic to one another, because one of them had lost their husband, and this was down to, she believes, was incompetence by the hospital staff, and the other woman is a woman who is trying to contact her sister, who was a nurse at the hospital, and her sister had committed suicide because of all the pressures that were put upon her. So they both kind of blame each other's kind of situation for inevitably the deaths of their loved ones. So they kind of go into this hospital to try and commune with their lost ones, and there is a spirit there which seems to have a tragic past that takes umbrage with them being there. What will happen? You'll have to watch the film and find out. So let's talk what I think works in a hospital. So I think hospitals are intrinsically a great setting for a haunted house movie. They're large buildings, plenty of places to explore, and just the kind of the idea of, you know, people who have suffered within these kind of walls gives it this kind of inbuilt kind of spooky kind of backdrop that it's easily kind of then exported into a kind of a ghost story. And this hospital, I think, looks suitably kind of creepy. A dilapidated old building that is essentially ruins now, and looks super creepy. I think the location shooting, the set design, wherever it was, looks really good, and I think, you know, it does really kind of add the ambiance of this kind of dark past that this kind of place may have had. I actually think there are some genuinely kind of like well put together kind of creepy moments. Our main kind of antagonist is this female ghost who wanders around with this kind of life-size kind of doll of a kind of a little boy to represent the kind of the child that she's lost. And there are some creepy sequences that involves her. It's a little bit kind of on the CGI side at times, but I think that nonetheless there are still some very kind of good sequences. When we first see her, she kind of like sort of slowly kind of comes out the darkness, pushing this kind of like pram with this kind of doll in it and her kind of like gaunt features behind it. It looks really good. So there are some kind of elements of that I do think work. And I also think having these 2 women who have this kind of opposing kind of point of views about, you know, the hospital and the kind of the you know, how things kind of have transpired there, does add some interesting drama in the movie, albeit I don't think they really do much with it. It's introduced and then it's kind of like off to do their own things to a certain degree. But I did like the idea of it, because it kind of gives these people genuine kind of beef that you can kind of imagine that they're having, even though they're not directly responsible necessarily for one of the situations. It's kind of there on different kind of sides that I quite liked. And it's also interesting seeing, because this movie is from Taiwan, the different kind of like ideas behind, you know, what kind of combats ghosts and things. In this instance, because we have these 2 kind of priests, they're using a lot of kind of you know, ancient remedies and kind of like things like this, and water that has got properties and stuff to kind of combat the ghosts, which I thought was a kind of a fun idea. We do see a lot on screen as well. There is a reasonable amount of effects on display here, so you're not kind of waiting too long before you kind of see anything. What doesn't work, the main problem with this movie for me is the tension is really undercut by having lots of flashback sequences. So the sequences that involve the ghosts actually in the hospital, I think they're not the scariest ones I've ever seen, but they're relatively effective. But the problem is here, they're punctuated with these sequences showing various kind of people involved in this hospital in a kind of a flashback. Now, there is a kind of a story reason, people are kind of seeing the past, but it really breaks the tension, unfortunately, and it almost goes so far is that it turns the movie into more of a kind of a soapy drama at times. So unfortunately, the kind of that building of that tension that you've seen in a lot of horror films, especially in haunted hospital films, you have this kind of slow building of the kind of the tension, this kind of the atmosphere, you know, gradually building to a crescendo towards the end of the movie. It's completely destroyed because it kind of has these extended and multiple kind of flashback sequences that really kind of undercut what I think could have been a potentially fairly kind of scary movie. And I've got to be honest with you, these sequences drag, and they actually repeat points that we already know, that these sequences are here to demonstrate what has happened to various kind of parties in the movie. But the film's already told us. I don't know if it really needed to kind of show us as well as telling us, or at least don't tell us and then show us kind of maybe in a shorter flashback. So to me, the decisions here to construct this movie in a narrative fashion was somewhat kind of flawed, because it's really just repeating points that the movie's already told us, sometimes 3 times. And it's just like, I know, we know this, kind of like, we don't need to kind of see it again, to be honest. I have to say as well, our characters, I think, are a little bit poorly drawn out. I mean, one of the women here, she wants to kind of see her husband that's passed away, to give him a kind of a message. But we see things happen, we see people potentially kind of getting killed, but she doesn't want to, she hasn't got any intention of kind of leaving. There's no attempt to escape. In fact, no one here is trying to kind of get out. They're just kind of carrying on with, you know, their kind of mission at hand. Now, arguably, the older kind of priest gets kind of possessed, so I accept that his younger son may try and you know, help him and stuff, and so he may not go. But the woman who has just yet to communicate with her dead husband, I think, was a little bit kind of, you know, silly at times. And also they make these women do things to try and get them in tune with the kind of the spirit world, which I thought was a little stupid. For example, they go into this morgue where they have all those kind of, you know, those cabinets where they put the bodies in the walls. I've forgotten what they're actually called. And they go, oh, you got to go in there, and they kind of have to lay in there for some reason, and it'd be pitch black, but there's light in there for some reason, you know. And it's just like, why are they in there? Oh, it's to get your spirit in tune. It's like, really? Yeah, okay, whatever. So there are some kind of sillier moments here. As I've mentioned, the effects, I think, I quite enjoyed them, but there are some instances where they look a little bit too kind of CGI, for instance. Again, it kind of undercuts the tension. Maybe it would have benefited from having, because there's quite a lot of effect shots here, but having maybe a few less, but slightly better quality, I think would have been beneficial to the kind of the movie. It's also somewhat predictable in regards to kind of plot here. And I have to be honest, but I think that the way this movie is structured, with all these kind of flashbacks and kind of unbelievable characters, it makes it a little dull at the end of the day. I think any kind of good faith that the movie built up in regards to having this kind of atmosphere is undone by having kind of underwritten characters and these flashbacks, which I think really do some damage in breaking the kind of the tension, and it makes ultimately the movie, you know, a little bit of a dull affair at the end of the day. So overall, there are some things to enjoy here, I think, if you are fairly undemanding, but it's certainly not up there with the kind of the better kind of the haunted house or haunted hospital movies. So for me, this one is a slightly below average movie. It's a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.